Hello, everyone. Dr. Dave Ballard here. I am recording these um, chapter summaries so that we have something to talk about each week. Now, I will cover all of the articles in the chapter, even though I've asked you to look at a smaller subset of them. I hope that this will give you kind of an overview of how they all relate. So this first chapter is on the relational form of organizations. So let's start there. I will bring up a PowerPoint because it's on the Canvas site and it's a way to organize information. But as you read, this short presentation may help you situate those articles in a larger context. So let's pull that up. It always takes, technology is so much fun. Not. All right, so here we go. We're going to do part one of your textbook, the relational organizational form. Okay? And there we go. So it always has like this title slide, and we probably want to define it. This type of theory is also known as the clan base or network theory. It's basically who you know. So all of you are familiar with this idea of how organizations work, how you progress, how you work together. People are fundamentally social beings. We have to interact with other people. We don't live in like little closets. And that's true at home and it's true at work. Our identities and our understanding of the world, they're formed through these interactions. So we react to the world and we react from the world. It is an interactionist paradigm-based perspective. The relational organizational form, it's horizontal, it's reciprocal relationships across functions. So I know somebody over in accounting and I have a problem with one of my vendors. I can then contact that person to help get that situation fixed. This is a common thing in organizations. And so focusing in on those common aspects means that you're really using these theories in the ways that we actually work. Management is not top down. It's not, you will do this. It's much more consultation. So the term is consultation, not command. Sorry about that. Had a little technical glitch on my part. I clicked and did something wrong. So management through consultation, both worker and worker management relationships are reciprocal. There's even an exchange theory. I do something for you and I have an expectation of you doing something back. Maybe in the future, maybe I bank those kinds of things, but it really is reciprocal. And those relationships emerge, they change, they morph, all kinds of different ways that they happen, but we invest in those. And I think you can recognize that from your own workplace. This type of approach to understanding organizations has some advantages. The horizontal and vertical relationships enable communication and coordination. Management by consultation really allows those people that are at the front line doing your agency's work to give feedback. So if the demographics of who your clients are changing and your old ways of doing your agency business don't really reflect that change, you can tell management, and perhaps we can see some consultation about how we can change our organization to better reflect who our clients are these days. So a demographic shift in your geographic region might bring that kind of thing to a fore. This reciprocal interaction that we talked about a minute ago, we see that people invest in the organization, that they are part of the whole. We should see better decision making, greater engagement, higher performance because of this. So as a manager, if you are looking to increase performance, changing from a bureaucratic form to a more relational form may help you achieve that goal. So bonding, loyalty, trust, all those things that really up productivity, make an organism, make people happier, those are some of the advantages of this particular approach. Of course, those ties are vulnerable to abuse of power. There are people that will use other people to get ahead. It also means that your interchangeability, that your ability to replace people might be problematic because they have all the relationships, and if that person leaves, then the good functioning of a job suddenly might become dysfunctional. There are no formal structures necessarily. There are, but they're de-emphasized. And so horizontal informal ties really need to be sustained, and that means that you might have those break down. And here's this last point. The reason for a bureaucracy is its ability to face the changing world. It can scale up, it can scale down, it can replicate itself, and so on. And I always think about the Army here. You're going along, and suddenly there's a war, and you have to scale up. The Army is a specific, or armed forces, is a specific type of bureaucracy, and it is designed that it can scale up when necessary, right? It can replicate itself and become kind of a self-sustaining organism, if you will. And that means that it has to have that kind of formalized roles, responsibilities, structure. Whereas this reciprocal relationship doesn't quite do that. It relies more on interaction. So when faced with that kind of scalability problem, relational organizations have a more difficult time. But are all agencies necessarily need to scale up? Or are there some that the relational form would work better for? All right, so we'll start out with Follett, the business as an integrative unity. This is her discussion on this topic. Now, you'll see Follett multiple times in multiple different paradigms. She was a very prolific writer, and she understood all of these, but she's really kind of the mother of this approach. She was the first to extend the relational perspective to the organization. Now, this relational perspective was around in other fields, let's say psychology, sociology, even criminology, where I come from, but applying it to a different level, the organizational level, was her unique contribution. Organizations are coordinated so they work together in an integrative way. So this is the idea that it's not just people, but parts of an organization can integrate into a unity. Workers gain an understanding of the overall organization. This is a really good thing. It can help if people understand why they're doing what they're doing in the overall picture. It allows them to have some investment in the outcome. It talks about interpersonal exchanges, increasing performance. If we're happy, we work harder. If we're unhappy, we don't. She even says that the relational form is better than a bureaucracy at achieving efficiency and effectiveness. Now, doesn't talk about that scalability thing, doesn't necessarily address those criticisms that I brought up a minute ago. But Follett, this article is really about, here are the advantages. Here is why organizations should consider this type of arrangement for their organization. Burns and Stalker, mechanistic and organic systems of management, really looks at the organic or relational form in opposition to the mechanistic or bureaucratic form. The relational form relies on adjustment, a structure. It doesn't have silos. It looks at different ways people communicate. And even something like job titles or ranks look more like consultation and less like rigid bureaucracies. It really is a organizational form that's particularly suited to change. Army, they can face change by doing what they used to do. But in a fast-paced, postmodern world, in a place like we are now where technology is changing how we do business as government entities, this type of organization is better suited than a bureaucracy. That's their argument. They contrast that to the mechanistic form. You can take a look at that. And really, they do set up a continuum. On one end is kind of pure mechanistic, on another pure organic, and all organizations are somewhere in between there, depending upon the situations, depending upon the time, depending upon the mission of the organization. William Ochi. I remember reading Ochi when I was an undergraduate. Markets, bureaucracies, and clans. Really, these clans represent alternative ways to solve challenges to our organizations. Now, clans is just another way of articulating these relational groups. You and your friends getting something done within your organization. The market form works well. The bureaucratic form works well. The clan form works well when outcomes are not easily measured and goals are strongly shared. So if I'm working for DPSS, for example, and we have to face a change like Obamacare being implemented, this is going to challenge the way we've done business. If we're too bureaucratic, it's going to make a real problem as how the organization adjusts. Ochi's idea is that the clan has, if we can get people to share goals, we can actually achieve that change even when we don't quite know what the outcomes are. Because in the beginning of this particular program, there was a lot of confusion. And that's true of many programs we have. The outcomes are hard to measure. Powell, Neither market nor hierarchy networks forms of organizations. Again, you can see this common theme, looks at a reliance on reciprocity, okay, the relational form. Networks rely on relationships based on emergent patterns, apt for circumstance that need efficient, reliable information built on trust. Markets are different. Bureaucracies, different. Now, if you are a kind of person, let's say that you're working in an organization and you make a mistake and you don't own up to it, and other people start not trusting you, then those kinds of relationships that this is advocating for are harmed. So not only is it advocating for a type of organization, but that also implies some personal agency and responsibility to the people that work there. That's my interpretation. Lena and Van Buren, Organizational Social Capital and Employment Practices. Social capital, relationships that are resources for action. Okay? If you needed to do a project, if you were given, okay, we need to do this by 2 weeks from now, and you can call on anybody in the organization, it's those pre-existing relationships you have. Maybe the person that you're a good friend with is not the one that you're going to use because they're off doing something else, but they'll go, you know what? I got a really good assistant and that person can help you. Social capital has a lot of meanings, especially in sociology, and it can improve the performance of organizations when they want to create knowledge, they want to transfer knowledge, they want a coordination of work, many other aspects of it. Organizational social capital is fostered by formal structures like employment security, reciprocity. You'll see that I'm saying the same thing for many of these articles. So as you read them, look for those commonalities. Himmer, doing your job and helping your friends, and universalistic norms about obligations to particular others in networks. Now, there is an academic who just can't help themselves but talk like an academic. It really looks at how professional and personal relationships are not separate. Many times, the people we socialize with outside of work are the people we work with. So it's recognizing those relations and their importance. The network organization is to apply universalistic principles to the treatment of particular individuals. We all want to feel fairly treated. That our personal nature of relationships need not be a limitation, that it can actually be an asset. Okay? Again, going back to this idea that this is a better, more efficient, effective way of doing your work. Lawler, Thine, and Yoon, social exchange and micro-social order. Okay, again, now these guys are talking using academic ease, but it's not hard to figure out. Person-to-person ties can become generalized into person-to-group ties over time. If we started a job together and we both were rookies, we go through orientation together, etc. Over time, we might diverge. One goes to run this agency, part of the agency, one goes over here. But the personal ties are still there. We may not see that person all the time, but when we do, we go, hey, how's it going? Do you remember when we first started out? Those are important relational ties. So we turn those in. Oops. Of course, I did something bad. in effect, how it might be possible to combine the advantage of personal ties with the advantage of scalability. So this article is one of those that is important in that it tries to bridge the gap between the bureaucratic form and the relational form. And I wanted to make that point because the way academics work, the way these kinds of articles are written, people look for those kind of, oh, let's make a bridge there. Is it possible? Okay, how can I take the best of this type, this paradigm, and combine it with something over here that has some advantages and make a better kind of paradigm plus? Now, that sounds all kind of up here in your head. When you read these, if you think about them, how they apply to your job, you're going to find that those thoughts come to you. Most importantly, when you're asked to write papers for other classes in this cohort, or even when you go on to work on your master's thesis, if you choose to go into the MPA program, what you'll find is that skill of breaching or bridging these types of paradigms or articles or ideas is really, really important, and it's so, so useful. Not one theory is the answer. We have a tendency to want to focus in on a theory because it's easy. That one will explain everything. But by combining theories or triangulating them, as it's called in the theory business, you can find that you can take the best from one and the best from other, and you create something that's better than either one of those. That's what being an academic is. So look for those ties also. Thank you much for your time and your attention. I told you this is going to be short. Each one of these is not very long, and it's designed to give you some thought on these overall chapters to help you. I hope it does.